In this episode of XTV Newsers, this gentleman and I used to share an office like the size of this room with about 8 people, so buckle up, it's going to be a fun ride. Hi, I'm XTV producer Jennifer Moore, and I'm really excited to have this guest, Joe Girvan. Joe recently departed from the Sportscaster world. Joe, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So Joe is joining us from sunny Florida. I'm really jealous. And I want to start off, you've pretty much lived everywhere in Florida. So can you walk me through all of the jobs you've had?
Sure. So 18 years of snow and cold drove me out of Massachusetts and to the University of Florida. My first job in commercial TV after school was at WCJB TV 20 for $4.85 an hour.
Get $4? What was the job?
Should have known.
Oh my gosh.
Jennifer, I should have known.
Isn't that like less, was that minimum wage at the time? Or?
I assume, it does go back a few days. We were talking about 1996. So, I don't know what the legalities of it were, but that was the wage as a photographer. And just an interesting side note, at that time, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I knew that. And I said, this is my end goal. Will you ever, if somebody's on vacation, somebody else is sick, will you ever give me a chance to do sports? No, never. You will never do sports at the station. Okay, that's fine. So that's 1996. I was at TV 20 as a photographer for about 4 months or so, 3-4 months. Went up to Savannah, Georgia. Jennifer hit the big time, $8.50 an hour. That was to be a photographer and a one-man band reporter. And then I got my first job in September of 1996 in Mobile, Alabama. I was there for 3 years. And at the end of those 3 years, I went back to where? Gainesville TV 20, where they told me I would never do sports, to be their sports director.
What changed your mind, you think? Like, was it a change of management or?
There were some adjustments. And I think, when you get out and you start proving it, now all of a sudden you have a reel, instead of a fresh-faced kid out of college, now at least there's a resume line or two. There's a reel behind you to support what you said that you would do.
That's why you should never say never, because like it could come and bite you in the ass later,
Truly. So I was there for 7.5 years before I got, what I considered at the time a big break to work in a market that I really wanted to work in, which was Tampa. And I went to Bay News 9 and Bright House Sports Network, and I was there for 3 years. I would have spent the rest of my career there. I love that part of the state. I love that part of the country. I love the pro sports, the college sports that we covered at that time. Unfortunately, towards the end of my third year, I was the second of about 8 layoffs. We were all replaced by people who made half as much. Much like the job that paid $4.85 an hour, this should have been a flashing neon sign. Get out of this crazy.
But you ran towards the danger. You're like a firefighter.
Well, yeah, not as brave perhaps, but I did run screaming towards it, yes. So anyway, after those 3 years, I went back to Gainesville. I had built up a name for myself, so I had sort of a soft landing there for a year as the sports director for the new Gainesville television network at that time. And I also hosted a daily 2-hour sports talk show on WRUF. So I was there for a year before I went to West Palm Beach, ESPN West Palm, and WPTV. I was there for 3 years, and now I've been here in Fort Myers for just over 3 years. So I have seen a good bit of the state.
Oh my gosh. And you've had a few jobs out of news in between too. Like I know you worked with the American Red Cross, and
Yes.
now you're working in finance, which we will definitely get to. I want to ask you what you've worked in radio and TV. What do you feel like are some of the differences between the two mediums?
The obvious is, one's visual and one's not. So when you're in radio, you have to be a lot more descriptive. And I found the biggest differences were when I would do play-by-play. So in television play-by-play, the viewer can obviously see everything that's happening. So the analyst is really the star of the show. I was more of a traffic cop, say what needed to be said, but no more, and set up my analysts. As opposed to radio play-by-play, where you, as the play-by-play announcer, you've got to be extremely descriptive and let the person at home paint their own picture mentally based on your words. And then the analyst helps in that, but the play-by-play person in radio needs to be the quote-unquote star of the show.
Now, did you always want to be a sportscaster, or did you have a time where you wanted to do something else? Like how long does your interest in broadcasting go back?
It goes back to probably sophomore, junior year of high school, definitely senior year of high school, when I was hitting about 260 and realized the Red Sox are never drafting new kids. So what can we do with this passion for sports? I knew that I loved sports. That was, my first love. The Boston Globe newspaper was always on the breakfast table as a kid. And I didn't go for the front page and I didn't go for the comics. I always went for the sports page. Can't tell you why. That's just the passion that came from, I think, probably my family, my friends. Boston is such a sports mad town. That was always my passion. And when I realized I couldn't play for a living and I didn't want to be a referee, I've always had a pretty good command of the language and could write well. And so it seemed to me a natural fit. Okay, I'll take my love for sports and I'll become a broadcaster.
Now I will be the first to admit I am pretty sports illiterate, but I've seen you work and I've seen you do play-by-plays. You're amazing. You're so quick, and you can, like, I feel like people who aren't familiar with broadcasting might think the sports job is like the easy gig. And I would really disagree with that on many levels. One of them being that you have to really be up on all of the teams, what's going on. You really have a lot of out of work homework to do pretty much every day and really closely follow all of these teams and all of these different sports. So I think that's, and also I'm sure like you are probably always afraid of, like, if you said the wrong thing or if you got something wrong, people would be the first to call you on in it. You know, all of a sudden you'd be late or something.
You know, as a broadcaster, I have a passion for sports, but there are millions of sports fans who are every bit as passionate. They just don't have, you know, the platform. So you're most certainly right that the need to maintain credibility by being accurate 100% of the time is paramount. And in television, you can really fake that. You know, everything's written into the teleprompter. It's 3 minutes. It's very controlled. But when you put yourself in the sports radio environment, you're talking about a daily call-in show where you have no idea what the next person on the phone is going to ask you about. You really have to be well-versed in a variety of subjects. And when you're not, because it's inevitable, you can't know everything about everything, you have to know a pretty quick way to find the answer or to get out of the situation you're in so that you can come back to it with the right answer.
Have you ever had like an awkward situation where you were, you know, commenting or doing a play-by-play and you really didn't know what was going on?
You know, not so much in play-by-play because the beauty of that, and it's my favorite thing I've ever done behind a microphone, is you're just describing what's in front of you. So, you know, the base knowledge is important, but it's really about what's happening right in front of your face. I'm sure if we went back and listened to some of my radio shows over the years, and this goes back to the early to mid 90s and to more recently in West Palm Beach, I'm sure there were plenty of times when I was caught off guard or didn't have a great answer prepared. But I'll be honest, nothing really sticks out as a moment when I was like, oh my God, what have I just said?
You kept it together pretty well. And you had a really great team at Bright House Sports Network. And that's where you and I worked together. So let's go back down memory lane. So I was a special projects producer for you guys who don't know. And Joe would do a sports show, but we were all in the same building for a while. So at one point they decided to, like, you guys had this back office. It was, how big was it? Like, it was not big at all.
Yeah, like a short hallway, right? You just had desks down.
Yeah, it was like the size of a shed or something. Like it was pretty small. So they decided that not only the sports people would work in there, but they would shove all the special projects people in there as well. So and we all had to like share desks, which was not, and also we didn't have shifts where that was very conducive. So we had at one point, I believe there was like, I was thinking about this, there was probably like 8 of us all trying to work in there. Mm-hmm. That was not a good situation. Thinking back, I was like, who came up with that idea?
It definitely wasn't ideal, but the cool thing is when you're smushed into a situation like that, you have no choice but to interact with the other people. So you and I became friends. Virginia is a wonderful person, and I miss, you know, just hanging out with her and being in the same office. What a joy she was to work with. And
Roger.
Rod, right. Yeah. And all the sports guys,
Rock.
Tim and Rock and Jason and Chris. I mean, just so many wonderful folks. We were all crammed together, and maybe it wasn't ideal.
We made it work. We didn't kill each other. So I would consider that a success. And like you guys would have, so how it would work is you guys always had like some nightly guest on the show, and, you know, like they would get a car service, like it was an athlete. And I would never, like, they would come waltzing in and other people would get excited. I would literally have no idea who they were. So like, I knew if it was like a bigger guy, it was probably like a football player. You know, so I knew it was some sort of athlete, but I had just moved to the area, and I'm not a sports person at all. So it was kind of ironic that we were all working together because I was literally the last person who would like have anything to talk about with you guys. But I remember, you know, just seeing all these guys, and some of them are pretty nice and down to earth. I remember meeting Ryan Neese and like Lolo Jones, which was pretty cool. And I didn't know who she was. I don't follow anything, but you guys had you guys had some really great shows, and you were able to do some amazing work there.
Yeah, it was cool, Jennifer, because we were outside that local TV box, right? You know, most of us got three,
Yeah.
3.5 minutes, 4 minutes. Oh my gosh, you got 4 minutes for a
I know,
story.
whoa. And then the producer always wants to cut sports and weather. So
Right. But at Bay News 9 and at Bright House Sports Network, we had, carved out more of a show. You know, they were 30-minute, sometimes 60-minute shows. And so you had, a chance to stretch out a little bit. And besides doing, the scores and highlights of the day, get into those interview segments. And it was so great on so many levels. Number one, you met people who were just wonderful. You maybe only saw them on the field or on TV, and you didn't know who they were. And by the end of a 15-minute conversation, you got a little bit of an idea of what made them tick. And I know for me, selfishly, it was such a great learning experience, because there's no way to become a better interviewer, which is to say a better listener, than by doing interviews on a regular, long form interviews on a regular basis, as opposed to the 2 or 3 minute interviews sometimes we would do in local TV. So it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it.
and you got to do a lot of traveling while there. Can you share some highlights, like some moments that you'll never forget that were just really cool to be there or experience?
For me, being a graduate of the University of Florida and having worked in Gainesville in the mid-2000s, having been front and center for the 2006 and 2008 football national championships, the 2006, 2007, and 2007, 2008 basketball national championships. As a Gator fan, it was a dream to be a part of it. And then, to be there in a professional capacity, those were wonderful learning experiences, to be alongside, people you watched on ESPN or CNN or wherever it may have been, people that you emulated, that you respected, to be able to meet them and talk to them and pick their brains, in addition to covering these major sporting events. Those were some of my favorite times as a sports broadcaster.
Awesome. All right. So let's get to the work side. Can you kind of share some of the best and worst parts about working in TV?
Sure. The best parts, that's a really easy question. It's people like you, Jennifer. It's the friendships we've made along the way. I look back over a career of about 25 years or so, and there was a lot of nonsense, and we'll get into that in a second, but there were so many wonderful friends for a lifetime made along the way, that's what warms my heart. Again, we'll get to the bitterness here in a moment, but those are the memories that I alluded to, that I treasure, and the friendships that, again, will last a lifetime. There's no putting a price on that. So for all the garbage, at least there was some great stuff too. In terms of the downside of news, we can go through the lack of compensation, the bad benefits compared to other industries, the ridiculous hours, the fact that you're really on call 24 hours a day. There are a lot of things that I think everybody experiences. I'm going to air my sour grapes right now. Here comes all the bitterness all out at one time, right? So forgive me for being selfish as I answer this part of the question, but this is raw and real and truly how I feel, right? So in 2017, the Florida Associated Press named me Sports Broadcaster of the Year. The Fort Myers News Press Reader's Choice Poll named me Sports Broadcaster of the Year. Our ratings were up during the time that I were there. I'm not saying that I'm responsible for that, but that's a factual statement. The ratings were up. So winning awards, working hard, ratings are up, and I lost my job. So that was the final flashing neon sign that said, Girvan, you've got to stop this. It doesn't make any sense. If it's not your fault that you lost your job, why did you lose your job? In any other industry, just about, if you work hard and you have talent and people respect the work that you're doing, you get a raise, not shown the door.
Yeah, and that's not just happening to you; it's happening to countless other people, and that's a trend that I feel like is not going away, and is kind of dangerous for our industry. So I think that's good that you're able to talk about that. And I saw, when you had left the station, your former station, your message was actually very positive. So I felt like you had such an optimistic attitude in a time that had to have been pretty difficult for you personally. And I think, moving forward is really the only thing we can do. Right. And it's weird because I was looking up, some information on you, and I saw a lot of stations in your market were getting rid of sports on the weekdays. How do you feel about that move?
I think part of it, if we're just talking about the market that I'm in, it was part of what empowered my manager to say, you know what, if the guys across town have already cut sports and the third station in town doesn't even do sports, we'll have an advantage no matter what. Even if we do barely anything, we'll have an advantage over the other guys. So it was a great reason, a great excuse for him to cut the staff down. So I think, on the micro level, that played a role. On the macro level, if this is happening nationwide, it's been happening nationwide for well over a decade. I mean, just in the last 2 markets that I've worked in, the Fox affiliate here in Fort Myers, Florida, does not have the sportscasters. The ABC affiliate in my previous market, West Palm Beach, does not have sportscasters. So this is, again, it's been happening for a long time. I don't see any reason why in what you might call a mediocre sports market like Fort Myers is, that I can see this trend continuing. Boston, Chicago, Detroit, New York, you're always going to have sports there. It's too much of the fabric of society. But here in Fort Myers, where, okay, we have 6 weeks of spring training, that's cool. We have a few golf tournaments, that's cool. Some people like high school football, that's cool. But there's no galvanizing, there's no University of Florida that everybody gets excited about like in Gainesville. There's no Detroit Tigers like everybody rallies around in Detroit. So I think in markets like this, minimizing or totally eliminating sports is going to continue.
Do you see what do you think is the future of sportscasting? Obviously it might not necessarily be on local news, but there's still people that obviously very much care about sports. And a lot of people are going to podcasts, they're going to YouTube channels. Is there anything that you're seeing that's exciting to you in this area?
Well, I think that, much like cable television with 500 channels, you can really narrow down what you want and watch just that, right? So there's one of the good things is in this continuing fracturing of the market, we're getting really specific. I'm a fantasy baseball junkie and I listen to fantasy baseball podcasts, right? 99.9% of the population is not doing that, but that niche exists for me and however many people there are like me. So I think if you really have a passion for a small, narrow segment of sports, then you can find that now more than you ever could before. I would say the other thing in terms of local TV, one thing that I tried to add in recent years is commentary, opinion, analysis. Everybody has on their phone the score and the highlight. It's not like when I was a kid and you had to wait till 11 o'clock to see what happened, right? You already know. So what can I offer you then at 11 o'clock that's different? Well, I can analyze those highlights that you saw on your phone. I can give you commentary about why the manager should have kept that pitcher in or pulled that pitcher out. And those are things I think that can be successful. I've seen them be successful. I believe in them. And I think that's one way that local TV can evolve is to be, in sports, it's not going to work obviously in news. You can't be opinionated about a murder case, but you can be opinionated about a football game. And I think that's one area that more TV stations should go down. I wish that my previous manager had not hamstrung me to the point where he said, you can't do it at 6 o'clock. You can only do it at 11. He took away my most highly rated show, my best chance to connect with viewers, because when you have that opinion and then you put that on social media, it inevitably leads to dialogue. And isn't that what we want? We want to interact with the viewer. We want to hook them in. We want them to feel like, hey, I'm not just some talking head. I'm a person, you're a person, and these two people are having a conversation, and now we strengthen our bond, and you're there tomorrow night at 6:20 watching on TV. I wish that my previous manager had not been so short-sighted.
That's a really interesting way of looking at it. And you're totally right. You were offering them a value proposition. I just talked to a YouTube expert, recently, and he said, what value do you offer them? And you were really thinking about what you were going to offer them. I think that's so interesting. After 20 years working in TV, I want to ask what kind of changes you've seen within the industry that you've noticed as someone who's lived it.
Yeah, how long do we have?
Joe, we have as long as you want. We can go Joe Rogan style.
I think if I, remember back to my Gainesville days, a couple of the changes that have become really noticeable in recent years to me were the amount of shows within a day. In other words, in 1999, 2000, I did a 6 o'clock show and I did an 11 o'clock show, period. Maybe there was a little bit of online content, but very little. Fast forward to present day, And it's not just 6 and 11, it's 4, 5, 6, 11. Maybe there's a noon, maybe you have to cut something for the morning show. Social media is a critical part of the job. Again, it's part of why it's a 24-hour day job. You cannot unplug. If you do unplug, you're inevitably playing catch up. So those are a couple of the things that really stand out. Another is travel. Again, talking about my treasured memories of following the Gators to national championship games and Final Fours and such. The travel across the country, especially in smaller or medium market stations, has been reduced dramatically. A lot of that is just cost cutting. Sure, it would be nice if you were standing in front of the arena, but we've got the satellite feed that'll give us all the highlights and interviews that we want. So do I want to pay $2,000, $4,000, $10,000 to send you somewhere? Worry about a satellite truck or however else we're uplinking the video, the audio. I think that's a big reason why travel is way down. And it's something, again, early in my sportscasting career I loved, and it went away.
Yeah, that's a really good point you bring up. Yeah, traveling to games is a big part of sportscasting. And yeah, stations are really cutting costs and they're not sending people as well. And you don't get as much of the context, I feel like, if you have an anchor standing in the studio versus someone that's actually there. They experience the game, whereas the anchor standing in the studio, they might have seen some highlights and pulled them, but it really kind of changes the nature of how they're telling this story.
And Jennifer, I think on the national level, in years to come, we're going to see a lot more of what has started to trickle into the industry, which is play-by-play, not done on site, but done thousands of miles away in a studio as the play-by-play and color commentator, play-by-play person and color commentator watch a screen. And it is, it's going to be a failure on so many levels. Yes, money will be saved, but like you just said, you lose the context, you lose the excitement, you lose so many things when maybe the local TV sportscaster at 11 o'clock doesn't need to be outside the arena, but the play-by-play person and the color commentator must be in the arena. They have to be at that game. They have to be talking to the coaches and the players and the referees before the game. And they need to feel the energy of the crowd during the game. To be doing remote broadcasts of live events, to me, is just folly.
Yeah. If you were if they put you in charge, how do you feel like stations could kind of rectify this money angle? Because it seems like, again, everybody's cutting costs, people are doing more. And that's a trend I've noticed from talking to folks through this show, is that, their workload has doubled, tripled. They're not getting paid anymore, and there's no more resources. So I can see why, the level of burnout in our industry is insane. And I can see why a lot of people are leaving the business because they don't want to deal with it.
And I don't think managers care. In fact, I think managers have embraced that turnover, that burnout. In other words, in each of my last few stops, what you saw was consistency in anchor teams, right? You've got to have consistency in your anchor team, but the reporters on a 2 to 3 year contract cycle are washing through.
Yeah.
One after, and again, this is not just in one place. I've seen it place after place. I've talked to friends around the country. They see it too, that reporters get burnt out and got to get, outside the industry, or they get burnt out on a particular station, think it'll be better in their next market. And it's not till they arrive there that they find out it's the same nonsense, just a bigger, better city.
How much pressure did you feel like you were under when you were on air?
I always felt like the pressure that was applied came from within. I'm my own worst critic. I'm a perfectionist. So it was rare that I felt outside pressure that was greater than what I internally put on myself. And certainly not on the air. During a broadcast, there was never a moment where I was like, oh, I wonder what my boss thought about that. I wonder if I'll get called in tomorrow about that. I'm presenting at that point, and I'm trying to block out any of the outside noise. So I don't know if that answers your question a little bit, but that's in terms of pressure, it was not something I felt from outside.
Well, that's a good thing then. And you managed to deal with it for a lot longer than again, there are people that leave the business 5 years in, 2 years in, and you really stayed in it for the long haul. So you don't see a lot of
smartest.
I don't feel like we're going to see as many people like you with 20 years. I talked to Brendan McLaughlin, who had over 20 years. Mike Deason, was it 50 years? Like that guy. And he's still sane. So it's, but I feel like we're going to see less and less of people like you, and more people that get in, realize what the business is, and then get out,
Jennifer, when I was in West Palm Beach, there was an anchor there, and I feel terribly that I cannot remember his name. I'm almost certain his first name is Jim. He was at that station for decades, I think 40 plus years. And on his final night, they threw a party that was akin to a wedding reception. And he earned it. It was wonderful. And I thought to myself, this is great. They flew his mother in from across the country. I mean, it was a really great tribute to a man who had meant so much to that station and to that market. But I don't think if I had stayed in TV news for another 50 years, I ever would have seen another thing like it. Those days are.
Yeah. Well, oh boy. Well, all right. So I want to talk about viral stories. I'm sure you have probably have an opinion on, what makes a viral story and what kind of attributes they have. What do you think makes a viral story?
I would preface it by saying I think you're much better positioned to answer this question than I am. Listen, if I got a couple hundred likes or retweets, I thought, ooh, that's a big deal. So not even anything close to viral. I think the two things when I see things that have gone viral, that they get millions of views, hits, whatever. The two things are generally it's unique, it's out of the ordinary, it's somebody falling off a truck, whatever, it could be 1,000 different things. And it's compelling video. So if you've got a unique situation and now we get to see it, this is why everybody else wants to see it, because we don't get to see it very often. And it was weird, it was cool, it was unique, whatever it might be.
Very cool. All right. And you've probably worked with PR people over the years, sports media relations people. Do you have any tips for folks who are working in PR or media relations and how they can better connect with their local station?
Sure. I would say the best thing that a PR person can do is make it easy on the reporter or anchor they're trying to get to. The more information that you can provide in a short form press release, don't give me 3 pages that I have to read, because I probably just don't have that kind of time, because I got to hit at 4 o'clock, I have to hit at 5 o'clock, and I have a 3-minute show at 6, and then I have to go shoot something after the 6 o'clock show. I think that the easier you can make our lives, here's a link to video, here's a link to it, to an interview. Those types of things really help on the receiver's end, on the for the reporter, for the anchor. The more you make my life easy, the better your chance of getting your story on the air. So that's the first thing that I would say. And then the second thing is, and I've worked with some great PR people over the years, and I don't want them to ever be upset when we don't run their story. It's not personal. It's just that we had better material or different material that I thought might be more compelling for the viewer. But there were, the times that I had a PR person contact me and I didn't run their stuff, it was never because, oh, I don't like you. It was just, this doesn't fit with what I'm doing here in this particular market.
Do you ever remember any super weird press releases you've gotten, or any really off the wall pitches where you're like, wow, this will never happen?
Yeah, there's a local PR company, wonderful people, and oftentimes they would bring food because they know in local TV,
free food wins.
For free food, right? So when you see the fruit basket walking around the newsroom, it seems so strange to me. And I would never ever put something on the air because somebody gave me a banana. Like that it would never enter the is this valuable to my viewers or not? You have a granola bar, it does not matter. I don't want your granola bar.
So, okay, so for folks watching, granola bars will not buy Joe.
Not for me. Yeah, not for maybe for others.
How about a steak or a bottle of wine or something? Would that maybe do that?
I wish that opportunity had presented itself. Maybe I would think
that might have been a better play. And I remember our old station had some baker send a cake with the station, they made a cake in the shape of the station logo. It was good cake, I don't know. I was like,
this business out of it. I don't know.
It was. I have no idea. I think they, and they always would leave business cards or something. But I've never in my entire life, I've never purchased a cake, so I would never really had a need for it. I don't know.
Pretty impressive streak you're on.
Yeah, I know. I've never purchased a cake. I only go out to eat 1 to 2 times a year. So it's we're on a roll here. I've also I don't buy a lot of stuff, so I'm probably not their target demographic. I don't know. Okay, so there's a lot of people on YouTube. YouTube is blowing up. Do you watch YouTube yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I tend to avoid going down the rabbit holes because I've done it, and I've seen how much time can be wasted by, let me look up Dave Matthews Band videos. And
then it's 4 a.m. and you're like,
a great song. And all of a sudden an hour and a half has passed and I have work to do. So yes, I find it to be a great tool on so many levels. And I do gain enjoyment from it. I wonder, and I'm going to rely on your expertise down the road, how perhaps I could become part of it. I mean, my resume reel has always been on YouTube. And so those, I did have a little interaction with it, but I know that there's a lot more that I can do. I may not know exactly how to go about it the best way, but I know you can help me. And I do appreciate the medium for what it is. It certainly is, we're in a time where technology and the ability to see things on a moment's notice, it's unparalleled.
Do you have any favorite channels you like to follow?
No, I don't use it the way many people do. I'm sure that'll change over the course of time, but I don't know that I subscribe to any channels.
That's Joe,
I know, right?
All right. Well, I would recommend, first of all, the Joe Rogan podcast. I don't really follow a lot of sports ones, but another one I follow is the H3 production podcast. It's a little bit off the wall, but they have very interesting guests, and the guy is pretty quirky. Okay. So I'm a fan of him. So H3, Philip DeFranco. Actually, you have like a Philip DeFranco-esque, like you kind of talk similarly. I think you should check him out. I feel like you and him could be like cousins or something. Like he's got like darker hair and stuff, but I feel like, and also he lived in Tampa for one time. He was like homeless or something, like literally. This dude came from nothing and now has like a media corporation. So the things you can do on YouTube are crazy. So I want to ask what, there are a lot of YouTubers that may be trying to get noticed or try to, get some attention there. What do you think are ways that maybe they can stand out as like an on-camera personality? Do you have any tips?
Boy, it's a great question. I don't feel like I'm well positioned to answer it, but my guesses would be, if you want to catch the attention of more mainstream media, then there's really no substitute for millions of clicks, millions of views. If you're getting that kind of attention, then others will take notice, including local TV. Other than that, I think that if you have the ability to do videos on YouTube and show professionalism and show comfort level and an ability to be a solid broadcaster, then news directors of local TV stations, national networks, what have you, will see the ability. They will take note of, you don't have to have 1 million views if you have skills, if you have talent. And so I think, just the more repetition a YouTuber would get, it's just like anything in life. The more you do it, the more you practice, the better you'll get. And perhaps that'll lead to other opportunities.
There's this trend now where a lot of people that have a big social media following are getting jobs from it. For instance, Jake Paul was able to get a Disney job because of his following. Do you feel like we're going to see more of that in TV news, or, like they kind of hire someone like, hey, we've got 2 candidates for sports. This person has 2 million, Instagram followers, and this person doesn't. Do you feel like that's going to be more of a factor in hiring decisions?
Yeah, I can definitely see where that would come into play. Local TV managers are confused. They're uncertain of what to do. They're throwing things against the wall to find out what sticks. And so if they have 2 candidates and candidate X has 1,000 followers, viewers, friends, whatever, and the other, candidate Y has 1 million, then it seems there's something different about this guy, girl, who they've been able to amass an audience that this one has not. So it seems like Y would be a better choice than X, if that makes sense.
Now, believe it or not, there are still people who have written to me and reached out and said they're still very interested in going into broadcast journalism. What kind of career advice would you give them for today?
Run!
And we're like being half serious, but we're half joking, but we're half serious here.
No, I think that you have to go in with your eyes wide open. And I have made sure that every intern that I've had over the last 20 years has understood the commitment in terms of time and effort that has to come forth, that it's going to be nights and it's going to be weekends and it's going to be holidays. You have to understand that going in. You have to understand the lack of compensation, the bad benefits compared to other industries. You have to wrap your brain around those things. And if you can tolerate the ridiculous hours, and if you can tolerate the lack of compensation, and you really have a passion for what you want to talk about, news, sports, weather, then go for it. If you think that this is going to make you rich and famous, you are barking up the wrong tree. Yeah. I think that people want fame. I don't understand all the reasons why, but and I've experienced it on a tiny, itsy bitsy level, right? And fame is probably not even the right word. But if I'm having dinner with a family member or a date or a friend or whatever, and somebody wants to come up and ask you for an autograph, on the one hand, that's very flattering. I always took it as such because it happens so infrequently. But if you are a big time star and you're constantly being interrupted by your fans, your viewers, your watchers, your listeners, people that you have to cater to because otherwise they're going to go away, that would be a difficult way to live, to not be able to go out in public. So be very careful of, I want to do this because I want to be famous. I want to be on TV. I want to be the next reality TV star. I think that it's a dangerous road to go down. And again, when we talk about fame and fortune, there is no fortune in local TV news. So you have to go into it eyes wide open and understanding the negatives as well as the potential positives. If you're able to feed the passion for the things you do like to talk about, for me, that was sports.
Well, that's really good advice. And I think that's really a good way to put it, because I feel, a lot of these people that are like you and I didn't know in college what it was going to be like. There wasn't really, I feel like I really did not have a good picture of what my life would be like. And a lot of other people I've talked to say the same thing. They're like, I didn't, like, I thought it was going to be, I thought it was going to be one way, but it was like a lot different than it actually turned out to be. Like they had some idea, but not a picture.
Life changes so much too between the time we're in college to, 15 years later, and for some, maybe 5 years later. When I did have instructors, professors who said, listen, sports guys, you're going to work weekends, you're going to work nights, you're going to work holidays. And I was like, so what else am I? I'm 20 years old, 21 years old, no family. Take all my nights and weekends. What else am I doing? Let's talk sports. But as you get older, and I'm married now, and I'm thinking about family, that schedule is not conducive to a good family life. So, right, your priorities change over the course of time.
For sure. What do you think?
Here's my wife walking in the door.
All right. And doesn't she work in PR?
She is, yes, a social marketing manager.
All right. So, okay. So you guys are a pretty good combination. She does the PR and social media stuff. You can do the on-air stuff. Pretty good. I'm trying to convince you guys to start a YouTube channel here, but
maybe we should take our show on the road or on YouTube.
I think you totally should. So what, if you were like 22 now, what do you think you would be doing if you were little Joe Girvan at graduating UF?
That's a great question.
I think about that all the time. I'm like, what would I do if I was, well, first of all, I don't think I would have gone to college, honestly.
Oh,
I think traditional college is definitely going to have to change, especially at these current prices. People are starting to realize, is this worth it?
It's absurd. I was very fortunate to go to the University of Florida at a time when out-of-state tuition at UF was the same as in-state tuition for me in Massachusetts. And so I felt like, in hindsight, I feel like I got a deal based on some of the private universities I looked at and what college costs now. So I definitely appreciate where you're coming from. And I'm sorry, Jennifer, ask me a question again. What
if you were 22 right now?
Oh, okay, yes.
And just graduating, what do you think you would do?
So the one, I really try hard not to live life with regrets, but one mistake that I made in college is, I had these two paths in front of me. You can go down the local TV news path, or you can go down this path, which is more play-by-play broadcasting. And I liked play-by-play, but my childhood revolved around 620 and 1120, turning on Bob Lobel, Mike Lynch, those guys in Boston, Massachusetts. They were my centers of the sports universe, and I wanted to be like them. So I went down the local TV news route. And obviously over the last 20, 25 years, we've seen how local TV news has changed, how sports has become minimized in local TV news, while play-by-play has grown and grown and grown, because what's DVR proof? Live sports. So I wish that I had gone down the play-by-play path. There was a time relatively early in my career when I was having these conversations in my head, and I approached the owner of multiple minor league baseball teams, and I said, my passion is in play-by-play. I want to do play-by-play. Oh, no problem. You're hired. $18,000 a year. Wow. And it's not like I was getting rich quick at that point in my life. I wasn't making a whole lot more than that, but I was like, how do I roll back?
Yeah. And once you get to that
I got out of $18,000 a year. I'm in that high 20s or $30,000 a year.
Yeah. It's hard. The later you are in your career, the harder it is to start over, because you get to the point where you're comfortable with that salary level. It's very difficult to leave if you're making, and I've never made six figures in TV. I don't think a lot of people have. And I feel like it's getting harder and harder to get to the point where you're making decent money. You have an okay life. So I'm okay with my decisions, but I do think there are things I could have done differently that might have panned out better. I guess we'll never know. But
right.
Yeah, I know. Well, all right. I want to ask you, what's your favorite social media platform?
I enjoy Twitter the most
Um,
because I feel like it's the most customizable. I can follow the newsmakers who I want to follow and nobody else. And
yeah.
so when I go to my Twitter feed, it's useful to me. When I go on Facebook, maybe 50, 60% of the stuff that I'm scrolling through really has no bearing on my life.
You get ads for some crazy products and.
Yeah, and silly videos, and
Yeah.
I, many years ago was getting a lot of friend requests from people who were not friends, and I accepted them all because I figured that was part of my job. And so so now on my feed, even though I've muted a good number of people, what have you, unfollowed them, whatever it is, I find Facebook to be cluttered. I do a little bit of Instagram, but not enough to use it like many others do, like I'm sure you do. So yeah, for me, Twitter is my favorite.
Very cool. Okay, so if you were put in charge, sort of like as Mike Deason says, if you were king, what do you think the TV industry can do overall to remain relevant and make sure they don't get left in this dust of new media?
Wow, yeah, it's a
What would
great
you do,
question.
like, to kind of turn things around, or at least make it, again, this business is kind of like a roller coaster, and we've all seen it, we've all experienced it. What would you do to try to get more eyeballs?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I have a magic wand, because if I did, my last job situation would have turned out differently. But I will say, going back to my previous employer and the other station in town that fights with it for #1 in the ratings, right? The other station lies on a daily basis. They tell untruths on a daily basis. Whereas I did not see that from my employer at the time. And so I think the first thing you have to do is be credible. Now I'm watching very little local news these days, but if I did, I would go to the source which I deem credible, not the one which I have watched lie over and over and over again. So I think credibility is A1. Beyond that, you have to cater to your local market. We've seen the change in sports from doing highlights of national events to no, you have got to lock down the area that you're in, because all that other stuff people can get from other sources.
Yeah.
But previously in this conversation, we talked about the fact that people have scores and highlights on their phones. So you have to give them something different. And for me, I think commentary and analysis fits that bill. But boy, Jennifer, it's a tough question. I don't know if there is a real good answer.
No, that's so true. And you have these, again, I've been hearing people even talk this week, different commentators talk about how the lack of gatekeepers has really changed the face of what we do. You don't need a TV station to put you on the air anymore. You can start a YouTube channel and there's nobody stopping you from doing it. So
No, there's
we're in a
good
very
and bad to that, for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely good and bad. And recently I just saw that Utah had passed a law saying, so I want to talk about, your life as an on-air personality. You guys had some restrictions. They kind of restricted your personal life, and they do that to a lot of people on TV. They did it to me, and I wasn't even on TV. I was a producer. But we have contracts, and we've got non-competes, and there are things that I feel kind of trap employees into staying there. So Utah just passed this law saying anybody under like $47,500 in broadcasting, you can't do a non-compete for. And anyone over that threshold, I think it can only be a year. What do you think about this move? Do you think this should be spread more across the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought it up. I want to approach it from a couple of different places. Early on, as you're asking the question, you were talking about limiting our personal lives. When I was in Gainesville, WCJB TV 20, this is a true story. In 2006, I had, for the prior 3 years, lent my name and my time and effort to a golf tournament in town that raised money for the Arc of Alachua County. I was very proud of it. We did a lot of great work in the community, and it really became a point of pride for me over the course of those first 3 years. In the fourth year, my assistant general manager and general manager sat me down, Bob Williams and Carolyn Barrett, and they told me, you may not do that tournament again unless it bears our name. And I said, oh, no problem. We're actually selling our title sponsorship right now for $10,000. It can be the WCJB TV 20 Joe Girvan Celebrity Scramble. And they said, no, you don't understand. If you don't put our name on it, you can't do it. I said, I can't raise money for people who need it.
It was a charity golf tournament. Geez.
Correct. I mean, so that's just to give people who may not understand the kind of limitations that are put on. Bob Williams and Carolyn Barrett did that to me in 2006. It's no surprise I left in 2007. Now, to dial in a little bit more on the non-compete thing, they are absurd, and they are held over the heads of people in this industry who make no money. I'm talking about $18,000 a year producers who are told, sure, you can get out of your contract, you owe me $21,000. I mean, it's just absurd. A good friend of mine who just got out of the industry literally within the last week, when he was on the West Coast in a small market in California, his contract was almost up, only had a couple months left, and he had a job offer in Phoenix. Tremendous place to live, outstanding television market, and his bosses said, no, you may not take that job. So the bosses know he's leaving in a couple of months. They know for those couple of months, he's going to be an unhappy person and not work to his fullest capability. So why would you do that to a person? Ran into a friend earlier this week. Her future husband just got a job in a different market. And I said, is your contract going to be problematic? And I won't tell you what she said, but I'll tell you what I said to her. Don't let it be. You tell me when there's a judge somewhere in these United States of America who will not allow you to take a better job that compensates you more in a place with your future husband, right? But I'm telling you, this person's boss is saying, you can't leave. It is terrible.
Crazy.
It must change. And I think that that law that you referenced where the non-compete is going away, that is a great step in the right direction. It's absurd to be holding people who make so little money to these incredible standards and not allowing them to pursue a better life for themselves. That's not what America is about. And the rules are too restrictive. They need to be changed.
And they're very one-sided. There's really no upside for the talent because a lot of people will sign anything just to get a job. They need a job. And
I've been in a position where, listen, here's the contract. Yeah. You either sign this today or you go home and don't come back. Again, Carolyn Barrett did that to me. Wow. Here it is. Put your name on it or you can't come back. It happened. Didn't just happen to me. It happens all over the country. And when these people who were making no money are held hostage and they have to make a decision, they take the money, however little it might be. It's bad. It's bad in so many ways.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to bring up is I would say probably the majority of people working on TV on air, you have limitations. Like, again, would you have been able to start a YouTube channel at your previous stations? No, exactly. And I wasn't even allowed to start.
Not a big problem.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you're going to see more and more cases like this where, and I think there's even going to be some debate over, a personality's Facebook page or personality's Twitter account, because does it belong to the station? Does it belong to the person? And what are you going to do? I
can tell you what my previous employer said. They didn't say it belongs to us, but they said, you will not talk about these subjects, X, Y, Z. Mm-hmm. Political debate. And I'm not saying there isn't some merit to it. If we just talk about politics, if you're putting out really strong feelings on one side or the other, there's a chance you're alienating half of your audience. So I can appreciate from the manager's perspective why some things would want to be off limits. But yes, they definitely, managers across the country dictate what you can talk about and how much you have to talk about the things you can talk about. And it's part of what's made it a 24-hour day job.
And when you're making so little money, I can see if someone's making a good salary, why there might be more restrictions. But for someone making $20,000 to $30,000, they can't start a YouTube channel. They can't have their own Facebook page, or the one that they start. I think one of my previous contracts said something like, if my spouse started a business, they could claim ownership. I'm not joking. You probably had the same or very similar clauses in your contract. And I read that. I was like, okay, so this means I can't do anything outside of, again, I was not making big money, but I could not start a side business. I could not do anything outside of that scope, definitely not news related for sure. But even being restricted from non-news activities seems a little over the top.
It's completely absurd. And these contracts need to be challenged in court. But what the stations know is they're paying, employee A $18,000, $24,000 a year. They don't have the money to go to court. Meanwhile, the company has all the resources it needs. They have lawyers on retainer. They don't need to put extra resources. Those resources are in-house. So the contracts are unilateral and they're rarely challenged because the companies know that the employees won't be able to.
What kind of arrangement do you think would be fair to both the station and to the employees? Like maybe an arrangement that was more mutually beneficial?
Sure, and and I think that I do understand why stations want to have non-competes. If they're investing time and resources in an employee, then to prevent them from going across town for a period of time, typically 1 year. I don't have a big problem with that. But telling someone they can't go to another part of the country, especially if there's a future spouse involved, there's a better opportunity for life and career involved, to try to place those restrictions on someone is it's unthinkable.
Oh, well, very interesting thoughts. And I do see, again, a lot of people might like someone like you, someone who works in TV might have a great chance of developing a social media following on YouTube or another platform, but
And should be.
You were so restricted. You couldn't even try to do that. And if you did and your channel got big, maybe the station would sue you. Who knows? But I think that's why you don't see a lot of TV reporters having YouTube channels. Yeah. So I don't know. Well, Joe, thank you so much. And I want to give you the opportunity to ask the viewers of this show any question you want, anything you want.
Well, thanks. First of all, I appreciate the invitation to be part of the show so much. This was a lot of fun. It's been great to catch up with you, Jennifer. And I would say to anybody watching, if I can be a resource for you in anything to do with the TV or radio industry, happy to do it. If you need a financial advisor, yes, that's the path that I'm currently on right now, and would be more than happy to help people who make crappy TV money or maybe better money in the real world. And the third thing that I'm doing is, in addition to a little sports, I'm going to do some radio play-by-play come the fall. But I'm also a licensed auctioneer. I've received my license in the last month or so.
And I'm so sorry. I wanted to ask you what you're doing now, so I apologize for that.
No.
Can you give us a little sampling of your auctioneer voice? Do you have one? Yeah.
Oh, Jennifer, would you be 25, 30, would you be 25? It's difficult to do without a whole,
without the actual auction taking place. Well, I think that's such a perfect thing for you, and the financial path as well are finances something you've had an interest in? I know you and I have talked about money quite a bit over the years.
When you've made as little money as we had, you have to manage your resources carefully, otherwise you're left with zero. So it's always been, I don't know if passion's the right word, but it's always been something that was important to me, to make sure that I manage my finances correctly so that I had enough money to eat, take vacations, whatever else it might be. So it seemed like a really natural fit. And so I'm really pleased to have gone down this road. And again, if I can help anybody, I'm happy to. And then in terms of the auctioneer piece, being able to do benefit auctions and raise money for charities, it's something that really warms my heart. And I'm getting to work with charitable organizations all over the state. So if I can be a resource in that respect too, not just in Florida, but anywhere around the country, I'm more than happy to do so.
All right. Do you do online auctions, Joe? Maybe you could be like the online YouTube auctioneer. I don't know. And what kind of financial services do you offer?
We are a holistic financial planning. So, we take a look at protection first and investments and paying down debt and a wide range. And the way that we do it, Jennifer, I think is different than many. It's counterintuitive to some of the financial planners that I've worked with over the years who were really only concerned with selling a product. Oh, you need this, you need this, you need this. What we do is take a look at each person or each family's individual financial situation, find out where there are inefficiencies, how we can help them today, and how we can help them build for a better future. And it's really rewarding work because I see people come into our office, they're disorganized, they're uncertain, they have so many questions and concerns, and by the time we meet with them once or twice, they feel like they're on a path to financial freedom and security. And that it's really, again, for me, it's heartwarming to see that change.
How are you liking it so far?
It's great, and it's great for that reason. It's great in the auction world to know at the end of the night. I was just at the Miracle Ball in Sarasota last weekend, and we raised tens of thousands of dollars for children's hospital. That warms my heart to be able to take individuals and families into our office, show them our philosophy, and help them manage their finances and set themselves up for future success. That warms my heart. So I'm really pleased that I've been able to do those two new things on top of still keeping my toes in the sports water just a little bit.
All right. Yes. What are you gonna be doing like a show or anything? I think you should.
Yeah, the plan right now is for high school football play-by-play in the fall, and there may be some basketball, baseball play-by-play the rest of the year. We'll see what develops there, but those conversations are ongoing, and there may be some radio talk show type stuff. We've talked about a YouTube channel, so I think all things are possible right now.
I think you're a great testament to for anyone out there who's looking to transition. You always have quite a few irons in the fire. You're always thinking about, what else can you do, and you've really managed to diversify your spectrum of what you're doing.
Well,
So
thank you for saying that. I'll tell you, just yesterday, I had a conversation with someone who has an agency, and they want me to facilitate speakers. My connections with athletes, helping out businesses or organizations who are putting on events. I am trying to diversify as much as possible. I don't want to have one job anymore like I've had for most of the last 25 years. I want to have 3, 4, 5. And if 1 or 2 of them go away, I want to be more recession proof. I've still got these 1, 2, or 3. And I'm, again, as I offer my services to your audience, if there's anything that I can do in terms of being a resource for life after broadcasting, I'm more than happy to do it, because you and I are living testament to the fact that not only can you do it, once you do it, life will be better. We promise.
all right, and Joe, how can people get in touch with you?
I'm all over social media. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and all the rest. My last name is spelled Girvan. It's Girvan, Girvan. You can find me on YouTube. My email address is all over the web too. So by all means, find me on social media. Send me a message, and I'd love to hear from everyone.
All right, and we will link to all your platforms here. Every way to reach out to Joe, we're going to link them. So don't worry. And Joe, I also have to thank you. So Joe actually introduced me to our realtor in Florida that helped us sell our $47,000 house.
Isn't she the best?
Oh my gosh, she's awesome. So if you're looking for a realtor in the Tampa area, Tampa, Florida, Melanie Atkinson, amazing. She was incredible, and she's the best realtor we've worked with to date. So Joe, you have to thank for some of this going on here. So wanted to say that again. I honestly, like, that kind of started our path rolling to being more secure financially. So I really wanted to thank you right here, right now.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Melanie's so great at her job and a wonderful person besides, and it was a thrill to be able to introduce people, and it's part of what I want to do in the financial world too, is when, let's say somebody comes to me and they don't have a will or a trust. That's not something I can provide, but before you walk out the door, I'm going to give you a number of an attorney, because that's too important. I'm not getting paid for that. There's no remuneration, but I care about people. I want to do good in this world, and so any way that I can be a resource for anyone, whether it's a realtor or an estate attorney or any point in between, I'm happy to help.
Wonderful. Well, Joe, thank you so much. Okay, so all right. Now that I've skipped around some questions, I do want to give you the chance. If you have any question, you can poll people. You can, just if there's something you've been wondering. Brian Jager, our former coworker, he asked, what kids' things should I know about that I don't already know about? So if you have anything you've just been wondering and you just want to get some feedback on, this is your chance.
Jagerbomb, it's great to hear
yes.
that name. And listen, like the rest of us, we're all getting older and we're losing a little touch with what the hip, happening new things are. And you say things like hip and happening, and it's clear that you're not. Questions. I would like to know from the new wave of sports broadcasters, right? People who are in college or maybe right out. What is it about the profession that draws you to it? What do you think your staying power is? Why do you think you have staying power? Why is this the right career path for you? Because I'm so negative right now. I know there's good to it. I've been there, but in 2018, it looks different than what I experienced in 2000, 2005. So I'd be curious for the young broadcasters out there, and again, specifically in sports, because news and weather are a different breed. For young sportscasters, what do you love about it? And what do you love about the path? Not your today so much, but your tomorrow and your 20 years from now. Why do you believe this is the right path to be on? Maybe there's a great answer that I haven't thought of.
Yeah, that's a really good question. All right, guys. So I'll put Joe's question in the description box as well. So if there's any sportsmen or women out there and you want to answer it, feel free. And Joe, thank you very much. I'm Jennifer Moore, XTV producer. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to XTV producer for more videos and more interviews with fine folks like Joe Girvan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. It was great.